All right, welcome everyone. This is Wednesday at 8 o'clock. Over the past, you've kind of gathered over the past couple of weeks, we've been moving. So this is in my new house that's mostly not all the way put together yet. But today we're going to be talking about the law of expectation, the art of positive self-talk, the art of positive vision, and the proactive operating process. And there's a couple times in this class where it feels like we kind of revisit something. We start with beliefs, and in a week or so, next couple weeks, you're going to do your values, and you're going to feel like it's very similar. Some of your values might be very similar to beliefs. The law of expectation is actually really similar to the law of belief, which we've already been through. And so I just want to revisit that a little bit, but take it from a different angle. I've heard back from some of you that when we talked about craft and psychocybernetics, that many of you like that idea. It's a way to retrain how you're thinking and how you handle some things. I want to revisit that today with a different slant. And I would love your feedback on what do you think about this idea. So I'm going to revisit this Bobby Summer, Maxwell Maltz topic, that we always act in a manner that is consistent with our self-image, but I'm going to change it this week to expectations, regardless of the reality of that self-image. And I want to talk a little bit again about this belief window.
I don't have Bluetooth. I'm going to borrow Mom's Bluetooth headphones.
Where we look at how we look at the world, and it does affect how we act, feel, produce, respond in our life. Any thoughts? We've done this a few weeks ago. Have you guys had any thoughts about this? Because I'm gonna look at it from a different perspective today, looking through the lens of expectations. Anybody have any questions or thoughts or comments on that? So let's forge ahead then on this. I'm going to introduce you to a talk that I found on, I don't even remember where I was at, but I discovered it on BYU TV. And the author of this talk, the presenter of this talk, her name is Carrie Wrigley. And the title of it was Christ-Centered Healing from Depression and Low Self-Worth. And as I go through this, I want you to think back to craft. Now, craft is great. I've used it a lot. It's helped me in my life. But sometimes I've noticed when I'm really focusing on craft, I become a little bit hyper-focused on myself. And I like this because it's similar to craft, but it has to do with how our expectations are. The bottom line is, if we expect something to happen, it likely will. If we don't expect, or we have low confidence that it'll happen, it probably won't. Well, what Carrie Wrigley taught us is that, so we call this the Wrigley diamond. This is my version of it. And what happens in our life is there are going to be things that happen to us that are hard. I'm going to share a very kind of deeply personal story today about how I went through something like this. But we're going to have grief and transition and conflict and challenging relationship with interpersonal skills. We might have some abuse. We might have loss of opportunity. We'll all have disappointment. At the top of the diamond, we also have good things that happen. We have successes and we have things that are good. But what happens often is when we have a challenging thing happen, it can affect our thoughts. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. Remind me, have I talked about being a downwinder before? Okay, so I see him shaking heads. So a downwinder is somebody who was born, I was born in 1960, my brother 1962, Southern Utah, Cedar City, St. George area. To the west of us at that time, there were some nuclear tests. The government was doing nuclear tests. And all of us living in southern Utah, northern Nevada, very corner of Arizona, were exposed to a lot of radiation. And that means that I could have a potential to get some things like leukemia, brain cancer, different things, not good things, than other people. Well, about 13 years ago, my brother, who's just a year younger than me, year and a half younger than me, we shared the same bedroom. We slept for a while in the same bed. At 44 years old, he contracted brain cancer. And within 14 months, he was gone. And the government gave him, I remember, a $50,000 check saying, sorry, this is what happens for you downwinders if you get sick and die, or have the potential of dying. And he died soon after he got the money. So what do you guys think happened to me, also a downwinder, happened to also be a bit of a worrier, prone to anxiety? What do you think happened to my thoughts? What did I start thinking and worrying about?
I would just say that, oh, I'm sorry, Hillary. I would say that, you obviously expected to have the same thing, something similar or the same thing happen because you had the same experience growing up. And so, yeah, so you probably worried a lot more about it.
Okay. And Hillary, did you have a comment? Perfect, Jen. Thank you. Hillary, what was your comment?
I was gonna say the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. So I started having thoughts, and worries to the point that I even started exhibiting some symptoms. Some of the same symptoms my brother had, and these thoughts can be really, really challenging. Negative or positive, worry and imagination, what if thinking, real versus imaginary dragons, this left brain, right brain dynamic that we talked about before. So here's the question. What do we do if we get on the wrong side of this thinking pattern, or we start having what if thoughts or worry thoughts or anxiety producing thoughts? Any suggestions on what you would recommend? I'm going to share a couple. Okay, so Kayla mentioned exactly what the others said, worried about what would happen if I got sick, contracted, exactly. Okay, well, chime in. Feel free anytime, by the way, to just unmute your mic, interrupt me if you need to. But here is a couple of quotes. One by Dr. Burns. When you change the way you think, you change the way you feel. And Martin Rossmann taught the discrepancy between the real and imagined is the root of suffering. So if we look at this bottom line, reality is, for me, even as a downwinder, I haven't looked up the statistics exactly, but let's use brain cancer, leukemia, all the things that I could get. As a downwinder, the chance of me getting that is probably like 1 in 100,000. All of you non-downwinders, it's probably like 1 in 200,000, right? So there's a greater chance that I could get it, but it's still relatively unlikely, okay? But my imagination is going like this. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm probably going to die. I've got 5 kids, and what happens if? And then I made this mistake, right? I started exhibiting some symptoms. So I started Googling symptoms, right? And if you Google symptoms, all of a sudden it's going to be, and you have all this information at your fingertips. It's like, well, I could have brain cancer or Parkinson or MS or ALS, all really bad things. And I got into a really, really tough spot to the point where I was actually having panic attacks, where I was actually not sleeping. And I'll share a little bit about where that path took me later. Well, if we have these challenges with these negative thoughts, there's things you can do. Cancel, replace, craft is still effective. Sing a hymn, memorize a scripture, inspirational quotes, practice meditation, go do something positive with your time. That's proactive operating process. Positive self-talk, the stuff we're reading about this week. And visualize, imagine success. All right. Og Mandino, one of my favorite quotes of all time is, weak is he who permits his thoughts to control his actions. Strong is he who forces his actions to control his thoughts. Well, we're going to skip this for the sake of time. It is good, but we'll not do it today. Well, what happens with our thoughts? Okay, if we have these negative what-if thoughts and these challenging things, it can then affect our behavior. Negative thinking often leads to negative behavior. Here's some examples, okay? I started Googling symptoms. I started doing hours and hours of research on all of these things that could happen to me. I started murmuring. I started complaining. I started doing, just maybe overeating, not sleeping, some negative behaviors, okay? Well, this week, some of you may have already watched this Wrigley, or this Sean Acor talk. Now, this is a reminder. Now, I encouraged you to watch this little talk. I sent a link out in the announcement before the meeting. Even if you watched it before the meeting, great. If not, still watch it. All you need to do is mention in the class meeting report that you watched the talk, and I'm going to give you a big fat 25 points extra credit. Okay, it's like 13 minutes long. He's a Harvard professor. Really cool. Okay, anybody watch it? Have comments on it? Thoughts?
I loved this video.
Yep.
It was really funny. It was entertaining besides educational, but I listened to it the very next day walking to work with my husband. So it just is really a great way to sort of think about how if we can just be positive, it's going to change so much about the way we live our life. I loved it.
Yeah, thanks, Hillary. So
yeah, me too. Me too. I loved it. Passed it on to as many people as I could.
Yeah, it's a keeper. It really is. And the
Great
irony
message.
is he's a Harvard professor, and it sounds a lot like the gospel, right? Some of the statements that he makes is gospel-ish, right? So think about this diamond. At the bottom of the diamond, we could murmur, grumble. We could do, overeat. We could do a lot of self-defeating behaviors. That's going to just make this cycle not good. Well, instead, if you have negative thinking, you're going to have negative actions. Let's think about the positive actions that we could do. Be grateful for the thing. He mentions every day somewhere, write 3 new things that you're grateful for. And I want you to notice he said 3 new things. It doesn't mean that every 4th time I'm going to be grateful again for my wife. But be thankful of all the good things to be grateful for. Keep a journal, exercise, meditation, and serve other people, okay? So those are the positive behaviors. Well, sometimes, though, we have the negative things going on, and let me fast forward here. It can affect our spirituality. We might have it go a negative way. And then this cycle continues. I'm going to fast forward. Where it could affect the next round of relationships. Well, this is the advice that Sister Wrigley gives, and it's a little bit like craft. First, identify the negative thinking that's going on and replace those negative thoughts with positive thoughts. Back to the affirmations, and you're actually going to write affirmations as part of the next part of your personal creed document. Identify the negative behaviors and replace them with positive behaviors. Stop Googling symptoms. Stop doing hours of endless research. Stop ordering any quick fix book or quick fix. I was doing this, thousands of dollars, my wife will tell you, on quick fix remedies online. Like I threw them all away as we moved, but supplements and all these things, right? I'm not saying they're necessarily bad. Replace them with positive behaviors, journaling, gratitude journal, exercise, reading your scriptures, attending the temple, serving other people, getting out and helping people. And it's going to help your spirit go up. And it will, according to Sister Wrigley, this, if practiced well, can be almost a permanent solution to most people suffering with depression. And it can help your self-worth. Okay, so any thoughts on the Wrigley Diamond? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to overkill this, and none of it's required for the class. Take it as, if you have interest or time, you may want to consume some of this. But I'm going to send you a link to the video of her talk and the transcript of her talk. Okay, I think it's if you know people dealing with depression, struggling with self-worth, it is a hallmark talk. But it's going to take an hour. So again, it's not part of the class, but I'm going to send you the link. Okay, I'm going to send you a couple other links as well. So this, yeah.
So in a class I've taken recently, the word rumination, you've probably heard of that, to ruminate.
Absolutely.
And I've thought a lot about that once you get in a negative way of thinking, that it's easy to let those negative thoughts build on. And I think the same thing can happen with the positive. Once you get, focused on that it can, and it just makes such a transformation in your life to really focus on those positive and let, but the identify part is so important, because as soon as you identify, I'm starting to, have this negative thought processes and they're building, and I'm starting, then you just nip it and then start to replace it. And I think it can make a profound difference. So.
You're exactly right, Jen. And you're looking at a world-class ruminator, right? At this point, I'm going to tell you what happened with me. So for me, I listened to the Carrie Wrigley talk and it helped. And I was practicing craft like crazy after my brother died. I was trying. I knew the tools, but I was failing at them. And where it really challenged me was when I started having two things happen in my life. Neither one are good. Panic attacks, and I stopped sleeping. I went through a 5-year period of time where I needed medical help to sleep. And it was not good sleep. I mean, and so I just was on a mission to beat it. And I discovered 2 books. I'm going to share with you one of these books. And the name of the book is called The Happiness Trap. It's for sale in the BYU Idaho bookstore. Okay. But The Happiness Trap introduced me to a new therapy called acceptance commitment therapy, which has 3 steps. Accept that I'm going to have times where I'm anxious or have panic, or I'm going to have times that I'm not going to sleep really well. And what happened with me is I was doing everything to avoid a panic attack and not sleeping. And it was just messing me up. So the first step is to accept the fact that I'm going to have worrisome moments, sad moments, anxious moments. The next thing is to choose or connect with the value, and then to take action on that value. Well, I thought, and I started practicing this. And there were exercises in these books.
And you'll have lots of topics. Try asking me about music.
So that's fine. So I started practicing it, and here's the great news. Within a few months, I was able to get off of all of the little supplements I was taking. I was able, and I started sleeping again well, and I was largely better, much better than I was before. But the problem with acceptance commitment therapy is there's nothing in the book or the therapy that talks about faith. And so I thought, I wonder if there's a faith-based version of this therapy that really kind of saved me. There's several of the counselors at the BYU Idaho Counseling Center that use acceptance commitment therapy. And so I stumbled across a little project, a talk given by one of our alumni, one of our professors at BYU Idaho, about Joseph Smith and Liberty Gel. And so I partnered with him, and I'm not peddling this at all, but I'm just going to share it with you. I partnered with him, and we created a book called Breaking the Chains of Worry and Anxiety. So this is a book that I helped create that's based on Liberty Gel, and acceptance commitment therapy. And I'm just going to share that with you quickly. And I'd love any of your comment or feedback. So if you think about, I'll make sure I'm not going to go over time. If you think about what Joseph Smith dealt with in Liberty Jail, he was there for 4.5 months. He was persecuted. I'm sure he was depressed. I'm sure he was anxious. I'm sure he worried. And he'd seen God the Father and Jesus Christ and Moroni and, great blessings. But I'm sure that there were times when he was depressed. And for a long time, he's just praying and saying, God, where are you? Why aren't you answering my prayers? You've talked to me before, and now you're not. And then finally, Heavenly Father comes back to him and says, Joseph, all these things, if you'll endure this well, all these things will give you experience to be for your good. But then he taught a 3-step process in D&C 121 to 123. And this is the 3-step process. He said, if you are dealing with hard times, if thou art called to pass through tribulations, and he lists all these ifs. The second thing is he said, know, my son, that all these things will give you experience and be for your good. And I'm going to be with you always. And then he said, therefore, hold on, fear not, and cheerfully do all things that lie in your power. And then this will all be for your good. Well, as Brother Williams was giving this talk, I'm thinking, if, no, therefore is acceptance commitment therapy. It's something that I believe in and have used to help me get through some challenges, right? And so the next line is acceptance commitment therapy. I'll just build this out really quickly. If you have anxiety or panic attacks, accept the fact that you're going through it. Don't try and fight it. Don't try to make it go away. And if you accept it, it brings some peace. Second, know what your values are. Choose your values. This is the value of vision. We talked about the 3 parts of vision last week, the 3 parts of purpose from Brother Christensen. And then the next step is to act on your values. Therefore, take action. And in the end, all these things will be for your good. So, and we'll become what Heavenly Father wants us to become and overcome a lot of the challenges that we face. That is correct. My wife just made a really wonderful comment. Say hi to the class, Cynthia.
Oh. Hello, everybody. But yeah, that's true. You don't always feel the same way the next day or the next week.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to keep practicing this because it'll, we're going to deal with these things. So here's a little example that we added in our book. And this kind of takes this acceptance commitment therapy to a level. If you notice that you're struggling, if you're having a hard time, take a minute and just I call this star with 2 A squared. So just pause, accept, take a breath, stop for a moment. And when I say stop, don't try to avoid the hard feelings. There's something we call urge surfing. If you're having a panic attack, the best thing you can do is go with it. Be with it. Let it run its course. Science tells us that when we have a negative thought that results in anxiety, the physiological response that you're going to have in your body is going to last about 90 seconds. If you just be with it and stay with it and try not to fight it, it's going to be temporary. Take a breath, accept the fact that you're having a hard time, ask yourself what you really want, and then act on what you really want. Act on your values. Respond in a way that you would like us to do. Okay? And you'll help it get through it. So I'm going to tell you two quick stories, and then we're going to end. Here's an example. This is one of my heroes in my life. He's one of my mentors. He just passed away about a year ago. This is my Uncle Wells. When my Uncle Wells was about 68-ish, late 60s, he had a massive heart attack. He lived through it, but his heart was about 50% functioning for the rest of his life. Now you think about the diamond, okay? He had a heart attack. That stunk. Bad news, right? Well, he could have had all sorts of woe is me, what if, life stinks thinking, and he could have had all sorts of negative actions. He could have just got grumpy, slept more, stayed home, watched TV, grumbled, be mad, which may have affected his spirit, and he likely would have not lived very long. But my Uncle Wells said, you know what? I'm still well enough to do some things that I love to do. So every day, he would put his little pontoon boat in the back of his pickup. He'd drive to the lake by his home, and except for Sunday, and he was going to stay on that lake until he caught 5 fish. And then he'd go home and be with his wife. And you're looking at a guy here, this was probably 4 years ago when he was 81 years old, who was extraordinarily happy every day. He accepted the fact that he had some limitations, that his heart was never going to be better, but he acted on something that he valued. That was getting outside and being with nature and fishing. And I don't know if I included this, but the other thing he'd do is he'd carve fan birds at night, and he'd give them to all of his friends. Well, we have a choice, and this is why we had you watch the Hoyt video. Dick and Ricky. I think Dick's the dad, Ricky's the son. He had a bad top of diamond thing. His son was born with severe cerebral palsy. They could have elected to put him in a home, but they let this kid live to his fullest, to the point that Dick, and actually if you follow the story, saved his life, spent time with this kid, triathlons, marathons, okay? Lindsay's sharing here to us. I'm just going to read through this, Lindsay, if that's okay. Others are reading as well. She said in a moment in her life, she was struggling with panic attacks and depression. I've been there, and I felt just like you did, stuck. Then she heard a saying by Brene Brown about being vulnerable and taking chances. The quote that changed her life was, discomfort or resentment, the choice is yours. I had to act on the things I wanted so I wouldn't resent when I went out life. That thought process changed your life. Excellent. Perfect example of this. Okay, thanks, Lindsay, for sharing that. Now, here we go. Another story, round 2. This is Faja Zing. I'm going to send you a link to an article that I wrote about my uncle, and I'm going to tell you this story about Faja Zing. Very similar example of acting and law of expectation. It's like Rick, the Hoyt story. When Faja Zing was, I'm not sure how old he was. I'm going to say 80s. He lost his wife, who passed away. And in India, where he's from, he was out in the field, and a windstorm came up and picked up a piece of sheet metal that was flying through the air. And right in front of him, the sheet metal decapitated his son. He died right in front of him. Well, Faja, again, could have had negative thinking and life stinks and stopped doing things that he loved. Instead, he said, you know what? I still love to run. And this is Faja running the New York Marathon at 102. Okay? So the choice is yours. When life gives you crap, you can have negative thoughts, negative thinking, or you can do positive self-talk, positive vision, proactive processing. You could practice ACT, accept the fact that there's going to be hard things in your life, and act on your values, and you'll be better off because of that. I'm going to read this quote, and we'll be really close to being done. President Packer said it was meant to be that life would be a challenge, to suffer some anxiety, depression, disappointment, even some failure is normal. Teach our members that if they can have a good, miserable day, several in a row, to stand steady and face them, things will straighten out. There is a great purpose for our struggle in life. So the choice, this is the law of expectation. Can or can't, it is a choice. If you believe you can, you likely will. If you believe you can't, you likely won't. And so my advice to you, practice what we learned in the lesson this week. If you have positive self-talk, positive vision, if you act proactively on your values, things will turn out better. All right, sorry, that's a whole lot of me, not enough of you. So here's what's happening the next 2 weeks. This week, you have the little article, the little paragraph, and again, it's just a paragraph about what you watched with the Hoyt thing. You have your threaded discussion on the Looking Pond essay, what kind of your expectations that you're dreaming of. Please mention if you watch the Sean Acor video, and still have to just watch it anytime this week. Let me know on the class meeting report, and I'm going to throw 25 extra points on, which is actually a lot. If you've had any missing assignments, it'll more than make up for what you've missed. We're going to do one more of those in a couple weeks. Next week, we're going to talk about balance and how all this ties together. And then the next week, so it's still 2 weeks away, you're going to build part 4 of your personal creed document. Okay, any questions, comments about what we're doing this week? Again, what I'm going to send you in an email is a link to a whole bunch of stuff. Again, it's just, if this topic is of interest to you, if you know of somebody that's dealing with anxiety and some of those challenges, I think some pretty good resources for that. So, okay, comments? I'll stay on for a minute to answer any questions, but if not, we will circle back next week and do this again, but on balance next week. And we'll revisit the law of 1% again. Okay, thank you all.
Brother Davis?
Yes.
I had a quick question.